Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, I'm going to make a tooling pouch out of leather for some of these tooling stamps and a swivel knife and a couple of decorative stamps that I picked up at a yard sale. And we may be doing something special with these tools in the future. So you might want to come back and check out some other videos, and those may pop back up. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so I've got a piece of shiny one-sided leather here, and I got this huge piece. It's probably 4 foot by 4 foot, and it came in a huge roll. And every time I go into Hobby Lobby or a leather shop or something, I always look and see if they have any scraps or odd pieces of leather they want to get rid of. Well, happenstance that I went to a Hobby Lobby one day, and I just walked through like I always do and go back and check out what they had in their leather aisle, and they had this huge roll of this leather, this brown chocolate leather, for $22, which I thought was pretty cheap. So I thought I can definitely do some projects with that, so I picked it up. So that's what I'm doing this with. I've got a piece, I cut a piece out 16 inches by approximately 19 or approximately 15 inches. So 16 inches wide by 15 inches tall, and then I folded over 3 3/8 of an inch at the bottom, and that's what's going to hold my stamping tools. So I just folded that over, and then I stitched it up the sides to close that up. Now that's how far I got before I turned the camera on, because I was just going to do this real quick, and I thought, you know what, I need to make this a project video. So that's where I'm at to get started. I've got a 15 by 16 piece of leather. It's fairly thin because I can actually sew it on my Brother machine, which is nothing more than a portable sewing machine with a heavy duty needle in it. So that's where I'm at. Now I got to decide how I'm going to divide this up to put these stamping tools in there. And I want to put a swivel knife in there too. These, again, I picked up at a yard sale. They were very inexpensive. This guy's grandfather had been into it a little bit, and he didn't use them very much, and unfortunately he passed on. So there's several of them in here, definitely enough for a set to get started and do some neat leather work. So I think there's a dozen in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm just going to mark this at center, which would be 8 inches, and then I'm going to do a stitch let's just say every inch. So I'm just going to put a small light mark and my stitching will cover that up. You won't even see it. Every inch from center. So at center at 8 inches, I went a half and a half on each side of 8 inches, then an inch from there, just to clarify that. And then mark it every inch. So let's do the same thing down at this end. I'm just putting a small mark just as a reference. And what that'll do is that'll give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and a small, I might be able to squeeze something in at the end, but 15 slots to put stamps in. And then I want to be able to roll this up and keep these stamps in here and carry them around. Be nice for them to be a little mobile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that around and I'm going to put a stitch at every inch. And I'm going to use a guide here on my machine. And I'm not starting it right at the actual fold, just above that. It doesn't matter. When I get to the top, I'll backstitch that so I lock all that in. That's going to make that strong because that's where you're going to take the tools in and out. So there's my first slot, and let's go ahead and let's take a tool and let's see how that fits. And that fits real nice and snug. So it's not going to just slide out of there or fall out. Now I designed the height so you'd be able to see what type of stamp you had in there. So you don't have to pull them out in order to see the stamp. So you can leave the actual stamp and put the handle down in first. So there's my first slot. And then we can go ahead and stitch the rest of these slots up. And as soon as I get that done, I'll be back and we'll continue on. Alright, I've got all those slots stitched up, and they're not perfectly straight, every single one of them, because I did it by eye. I just made that little mark and went by that, but they turned out pretty nice. There's the stamps in there. I've got my swivel knife here. I've still got 1, 2, 3, 4 slots open, so it can expand if you need be or add some. And I used all the ones that were in the box that I bought at the yard sale. So nice little set of stamps. So what I'm going to do is, I think, as thick as this is, I mean, it's not super thick leather, but I think I'm just going to fold it over one time, like so, to cover that up before I roll it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down, leave a little bit of space at the top just in case you happen to have something you want to put in there that's a little longer. Maybe you want to put a scribe or something in there. So I'll leave a little space in there and not fold it all the way over to the top of the stamps that are there. So let's go ahead and measure and see what we've got. And it looks like right at 5 inches. So if we come down 5 inches, we're going to take a couple of inches off because that folded over is right at 7. So let's go ahead and let's just take a couple of inches off of the top of this. And it is squared up. I squared it up when I cut it off. So we'll put it on my cutting mat here and make sure we're square and straight on the cutting mat. I'm using my grid and a square. Let's go ahead and cut that 2 inches off. We're going to save this because we're going to use that for another part of it. And then I'll take my little plastic thing I saved off of a light one time. I use this all the time for rounding corners. And it comes in really handy. I save a lot of things like that. If that has a radius on it or something that I'm going to throw away, I always save it so I can use it for my leather working. If I want to cut rounded corners or shapes or anything that looks interesting, I always hang on to that. And again, I want to give this a nice rounded corner appearance instead of just cutting it off square. And show you those corners. So now if I take that down to the bottom, that's what I end up with. So let's check and see what that ends up being, right at 5 inches. So the next thing I want to do is I've got some buckles here. Got some different colors. I've got some dark, some bright silver, and then I've got like a gold color that I could use. I want to look and see which one I like the best. Lay it against the, and I think I like the dark colored one the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece, this 2-inch piece that I cut off, and I'm going to make a strap for that, and we're going to attach it down here so that when I roll that up, I'll have something to buckle that to, and that'll close that up and hold those together, and it'll be adjustable. So let's move this out of the way just for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just cut this. Let's put all these buckles back up that we don't need. I'm just going to cut it to full length, which was right at 16 inches, if you recall. And it looks like this is going to be 3/4 of an inch wide. So let's just go ahead and do what, I'm going to square that off where that was rounded. That's going to make it much easier. Do that first. I don't really need that full 16 inches. So let's get those rounded corners off of there on both ends. Use that grid, and then that'll give me a good straight surface to cut on. Let's go ahead and go right at 5/8, because it'd be a tight fit at 3/4 of an inch on that buckle. So let's go ahead and just go 5/8 of an inch. Sorry if I get in your way here. I gotta hold this down. Try to keep that from moving as much as possible. So there's my strip. It is now approximately 14.5 inches long, 5/8 of an inch wide. I can take my buckle and see how I'm gonna do this. I don't want to put a huge slot in it like I would a belt. So I think I'll measure that by eye, kind of fold that over, and use a round punch. Punch a hole in there using an 1/8 of an inch punch. That's a pretty small buckle. Easy to punch through. And let's go through, and there's my buckle. You can see that slides, and got that on there backwards. This has a little lip on it, the catch. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a single rivet in there. So I don't need a very large or long rivet. So I've got some short ones here, 3/16 of an inch. And somebody had asked in a previous video where I got some of those shorter ones, and picked them up in the fabric area of Hobby Lobby. It's so strange they don't have the short ones in the leather craft area, but they do in the lawn or the fabric area. So let me grab the setter. I'll put it on the edge of the table here so I don't mess up my little buckle, because it is close to that. Makes for a nice finished strap. And then I believe I will need one to attach it to here. So let's go ahead and put this on this side. Roll this up. And then let's kind of get an idea how long we need this. And believe it or not, as you can see, it's not too long. It's going to work just fine. So we'll leave that length. Unroll that. Let's go ahead and take a rounding punch. And let's round the end of that strap. Just to give it a little round cornered edge instead of square. Then we can go ahead and determine, I'll take my stylus, we'll fold it back up, roll it back up, and we'll determine where we need to place our holes. our strap. So we want this to come around like so. And to be snug, will be right there. So I'll just make a little indentation mark with my stylus. And then we can come back this way and this way a little bit in case we need to tighten or loosen that. Again, let's use a small 1/8 of an inch punch. For the hole. And then I'll just go about 3/4 of an inch or so. Make a couple of holes. If you want to measure, fine. I'm just doing it by eye. And then I'll make one a little closer to the end. In fact, I'll make two a little closer to the end. So we can go either direction. Either tighten it up or loosen it up as needed, depending on if you put any more tools in here or take some out. So now what we're going to do is double check before I mount this, and let's see if our strap's going to work okay. And once it's mounted, that's going to work out great. Looks good. Definitely going to hold it together. Nice little carrying pouch. Let's take this off. I'll tell you what, let's put it back on the way we want it, and then we'll mark it. See if we can mark it where we want to mount this. Then I want to mount it approximately right there. So what I did was I took that stylus and made sure it went through both thicknesses, the strap and the tool pouch, so I'll know where to put my holes. For my rivet, because I'm just going to place that in there with a rivet. Make sure that I'm only on that single thickness there. So there's that one. Put it on my strap. Then I'll take another small, short rivet. Find me a cap, and I can put it in here from the inside. Put my setter on there. Then I can put my strap on the outside and put my cap on there. And this is just to keep that strap on there. It may turn or twist or whatever, but just to keep it on there, you don't lose your strap. It's nice and tight. going anywhere. Let's flip this back over. There's our punches. Each one of them has their own slot. You can move them wherever you want. Fold the top over. Then I can go ahead and fold my pouch. And you can fold this however you want, depending on how tight you want it, what you want to look like. If you don't want anything sticking out of the other end, any of the pouch material, because that will push that top flap. So if you don't want any of that showing, you'll have to tuck that in as you go, just like anything that you'd be folding over or rolling up. And I think I'll tuck that in a little bit more. I'll tuck it in at the beginning so you won't see it down there. And as you use this, it'll soften up. So the more you use it, the more it'll soften up, and it'll get a memory to it. That'll make it easier to fold up. Alright, so there's the pouch folded up. Nothing's going to come out of it. And then we can put our strap on. And there's the finished product. The ends are enclosed. Nothing's going to come out. Nothing's going to fall out, slip out. Everything's secure. You can carry those around, throw them in your vehicle, throw them in a toolbox, and then they're going to be secured. And when you're ready to use them, undo the strap. And open up the pouch. And there's your stamping tools. Ready to take them out and start stamping when you're done with them. Easy to snug them right back in that slot that you took them out of. Alright, so there's another project completed. Turned out real nice. Again, just some very inexpensive thin leather to do projects with. Found it on sale at Hobby Lobby really cheap. And I check out any of those leather stores or craft areas anytime I go in to see if they have something like that. And look how much I have left of this. That was after that. I mean, this is a huge piece. So I've got all kinds of, and I could use this side as a finished side if I wanted. So I've got all kinds of that left to do other things with. So it turned out nice, very inexpensive to make, but very practical. Again, you can throw this in your vehicle, you can throw it in your toolbox, whatever, and all of your stamps are going to be secure. So Appreciate you coming. Appreciate you watching. Please come back, check out the next video. I appreciate it. And we may be doing something special with this in a future video. So you'll want to come back and check that out. So like I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.